Hey there, all my hockey enthusiasts. I'm coming to you live from my kids' playroom and decided to do a little bit of mobility work at the end of my day. And since I can't find my dowel, I'll just grab my hockey stick and I'll show you a few movements that you can do real quick. This is where the hips and knees are both bent and rotated in opposite directions. And we're just going to take the hockey stick or dowel, whatever you have. Do a little bit of shoulder dislocates. Make sure that you squeeze the shoulder blades when you do it. Don't let those shoulders pitch too far forward. Coming up into some kneeling positions, allowing some rotation to happen through the hips and the spine. Come up into a lunging position. Reapproaching those shoulder dislocators. I know they sound worse, but they're not actually dislocating your shoulders. The shoulders move just fine back there. So don't worry about actually dislocating your shoulders, but still move with caution. In that lunge position, moving into some rotations. When you are in this half kneel lunge, make sure that back glute is a little bit squeezed so you're not moving too much into your lower back. If you are hitting any pinchy zones or any painful areas, don't. That means you've gone too far and you don't own those. Sit back down and we're gonna do the other side. So again, starting with some rotations, keeping those elbows locked, making sure that most of the rotation is happening through the hips and the upper back. Moving into some shoulder dislocators, squeeze those blades back, make sure you keep those shoulders back so they don't pitch forward and pinch in the shoulders. And then up into a kneeling, adding a little rotation here. Remember to breathe. And when I do the rotations, I'm always leading with the head and the neck. Good. And in this variation, I'm doing some rotations with an overhead position. Back into some rotations here. Very relevant for any rotation sports, such as hockey, baseball, golf, and then some deep lunge positions. This will help increase the stride length. Not only are you opening up the hips, but this is a really good ankle mobilizer. Flip your grip so your palms are facing the ceiling. We'll pop up into a tall kneel position. Keep the glutes squeezed, keep your ribs down. This is going to help unwind the elbows. It's also working on shoulder blade stabilization. And again, we're going back into rotations. You will feel a little bit of a different stretch just from changing the grip. Most of us have this overhand position because we live there for majority of the day. We don't open up the palms and the elbows, so we get tight elbows. And throwing some lunge positions in there as well, just to kind of work on some fascial lines. Really nice stretch that you'll feel in the outer hip with this, as well as the shoulders and the elbows when you do these lifts. Don't forget the other side. One side might feel a little different. Just watching this video, I can see that I have a little less shoulder flexion when I'm rotated to the right. Probably because I do everything to the left, being right-handed. Much easier on the left side in both hip positions. So anytime you notice that you feel a little more tightness in one area than the other, that is the side you need to work on the most. So you need to spend a little bit more time to create some balance right and left sides. This is a complete option for you. Make sure that you're not leaning too far back, especially if your knees aren't used to it. Popping up into some squats. Again, mobilizing the ankles, hopping up on the toes. Now we're going to the belly and we're gonna work on some shoulder flexion with thoracic extension. And then just moving up into some thoracic rotations here. Now again, make sure that you keep a little tension in the belly. Keep your glutes locked on so you don't move into your lower back too much. And you're going to breathe comfortably as you move from side to side. Back into some shoulder dislocators. Real key, keep those shoulders lifted, keep those blades squeezed, and only move to where it's comfortable. Throwing in a little bit of opposite hip extension. Next, we'll just keep the stick, pop back into a little child's pose, and we're going to eventually get to our back here. There we go. And work on some hollows. Key here is keep your lower back flat against the floor. There should be no pinching or arching. If there is, it's going to cause compression in your lower back. It's not going to feel good. And then this will help loosen off some of the the hamstring tightness, activating hip flexors, and getting some flexion through that spine. All I'm doing is touching the stick to my shin and just sliding it up to add a little compression to help loosen off the hammies. Next, we'll just roll onto the side, do some hip abductions, so some side hollows. With some hip abduction or hip lifts. Hit the other side to balance it out. Ten to 12 reps is enough. Now we'll pop up into some glute bridges. And I'm just using some resistance on the stick, pressing into my hips to give the hips a little bit more of a challenge. Primarily, you should only feel this in the glutes. If you're feeling the low back or the hamstrings or quads, you're probably not setting the core. So you got to make sure that that belly button is drawn into the spine. Switch it to some single leg. Again, try and get to the very top of the movement with no twisting going through the pelvis and the back. Some seated toe touches. Just to open up the spine again. Staying in that long seated position, we'll just do some twists. Palms are still facing up. And we're breathing. So we're kind of doing a push-pull here. Push with that inside hand and pull with the outside hand. Pull that dowel, or stick, up overhead. Good. And keep it there, and we're going to do some bum walks. This is really good for any quadratus lumborum tightness or weakness. So its primary job is just to hike that hip, but helps loosen off the spine as well. Moving up into the standing position, we're just going to start with some standing rotations, allowing movement to happen through the trunk and the hips and the lower body. Take a nice tall standing sharpened position, back into the shoulder dislocators, opening things up. Don't forget to breathe, and bending forward and touching the toes with the stick. Staying down there, adding a little bit of twisting and some, I guess they'd be Jefferson curls. We're just adding a rotation component. Flip the grip position. Again, we're unlocking the elbows and the wrists. Adding some rotations. Now we're going to step back and do some lunges. So similar to the half kneeling position that we did earlier, but now we're adding a little bit more movement. We're in a little bit more of an advanced position, being in the standing position. Definitely more relevant for your hockey stride and shooting. Step back, add some arches, and some deep lunge rotations. Switch sides. Always remember to breathe when you're doing these. If you find that you're holding your breath, the position or the range of motion might be a little bit too challenging for you, so you're trying to protect yourself. Don't do that. You're not going to get any benefit or ranges attained when we do that. Next, we're kind of doing a single leg or kickstand toe touch, just feeling the flexibility right versus left. If you're feeling a little more tightness on one side, probably a little more work that needs to be done. So let's spend a little more time on that tighter side. Drop into a deep squat. Now the hips and the shoulders are feeling a little bit more mobile. Spine is a little bit more awake. So this overhead deep squat is going to be a little more attainable. Okay, that's it for the hockey stick warm-up that you can do pretty much anywhere, like your child's basement playroom, on an IKEA mat, and a simple hockey stick or dowel, whatever you've got. And you can use this if you're a baseball player, any kind of rotation sport, anything where you need to improve rotation around the spine, around the hips, and shoulder mobility. This is gonna work just fine. And when you're doing it, just pick and choose. Start from the ground, do some groundwork, laying down on your back or laying on your side or stomach, working your way up into seated, up into kneeling, and then into standing. Like I said, there's no wrong way of doing it. But the important thing is that when you're doing this, there's no pain in any joint, and you're able to breathe comfortably through it. If you cannot breathe and you're holding your breath, you're going too far, or maybe you're just moving to ranges that you cannot own. So enjoy. Remember, warm up before you do any kind of activity so you don't get hurt.